in time for a couple of new arrivals.
Okay, so I've started the recording. So just back to where we were. So hopefully everyone received the circular email about the end of year. And I'm just going to... and of course the link in there takes you to our end of year document Dropbox, which has all the Word documents. So if you're looking for some written instructions, then is there a mute button? So if you're looking for written instructions on anything from end of year, they're in this Dropbox. So pay-as-you-go tax, there's how's your payroll year end. Here's your taxable payment reporting, as well as your superannuation, updating tax files, the whole thing. And you'll notice every document is in Word and PDF format. So we provide it in Word format as well, because if you want to, you can add your own notes to it or your own company logos, anything like that. If you don't have that link, you should be able to just send in an email to the help desk and we can resend you the link. Also, just be aware there's another folder called Reconciliation Report. So later on, when we get to taxable payment reconciliation report, that's where you can download that report from to load it onto your system. So now, I'm just going to jump into our server now. So hopefully you can see an accounts payable module. So we're going to be talking about taxable payment reporting, or TPAR for short. What is it? It's just the government's way of spying on subcontractors to make sure they're meeting their tax obligations. And the tax office has kindly made all you people their spies. So you have to report to the tax office information about contractors. The tax office then collates that all by ABN numbers to make sure all your subbies are paying the right tax. Mainly that they haven't turned themselves into a subcontractor to avoid paying tax. I think that's the main one that they look for. Your taxable payment, or TPAR for short, is due on August 28, okay, of every year. So you've got a fair gap. You've still got another month left to do. So basically you're reporting on all your subcontractors. So the first thing you need to do is, with your vendor setup, make sure you have got this tick box ticked, the generate taxable payment report. That is what includes and excludes your subbies in this reporting. In preparation for this, you could, start doing some inquiries, for example. So if I just bring up an inquiry and I click on the top and add a column beside, I could bring in their Australian business number. And then you could also bring in all their addresses if you want to make sure everything's populated and that type of thing. You could also bring in another column to see that field is called, as I scroll through my inquiry. I'll just bring that up a bit higher on the screen so you can see what I'm doing. Thanks. Generate payment summary. So you'll see all the crosses are the ones that are flagged to generate payments, the TPAR report. So you might you could export this to Excel if you wanted to do filters on it. You could put a filter on it here, Or you could just cast your eye down this list to start checking the ones that have got ABN numbers missing or not populated. Now you'll see here some of our ABNs are tight and have no spaces, and some ABNs are entered with spaces. The reality is it doesn't matter. When you generate the taxable payment report, the report automatically formats the ABN that you go into. The only thing you want to avoid if you're training new staff is just always remind them not to enter any punctuation. So don't put hyphens or full stops between the numbers. And of course, spaces or no spaces doesn't matter. If you want, you could also bring in a field called year to date paid, and that will show you what you're going to be reporting. You could export that to Excel and again use your filters for the vendors that you will and won't be reporting on. That's one way, you know, if you've got a quiet time in the lead up to the 28th of August, if you want to start doing a bit of preliminary work. The other option is you can use the report, which I haven't actually got loaded on here, but that was back in our Dropbox. There's a TPAR reconciliation report. You could run that and have a view of it to make sure everything's okay. And that's really just comparing your transaction file to your master file. I'm not sure what you would change, you know, if you've got everything processed. The tax office, interesting, I was just reading the notes to refresh my memory. They really make a point of saying you will be penalised if you underreport. So basically, if you've got subcontractors and you don't report on them, you could be penalised. That's the threat. But you'll never be penalised for over-reporting. So if you're in doubt about whether a company is a subcontractor or not, I would flag them as yes. Much safer to over-report than under-report. So once you've done all your preliminary work and your inquiry or your report, or both if you want, and you're actually happy that you're going to create your file, you come down here to Tasks, Generate Payments Report, and you get lumped with this screen. Then, of course, you have to, I borrowed someone's ABN because you need a valid one in here. So 7115350. Oh. Try third time lucky. Of course, that won't accept an invalid ABN. Your ABN number actually has check digits automatically inserted in it. So, for example, if you enter in a bad number, the system knows. You fill out your contact details and things like that. There's some additional supplier information, which is with emails and things like that. Now, the majority of you will be doing payments to vendor. You will only go by fiscal entity if you have multiple prefixes in your general ledger and they have different ABNs, and therefore you need to report them by entity, if that makes sense. Did that make sense, Ben, or do I have to repeat it? So if you've got multiple prefix A's that have different ABNs, you'll be reporting by fiscal entity and you'll have to fill in all your information. But if you're only one company and one ABN, you'll do it by the vendor format. And I'll just have to put that ABN back in again, which was very silly of me. 50.
I'll just copy it in case you need it again.
Well, hindsight's wonderful, isn't it, Ben? So, and then of course, down the very bottom field, minimum reporting amount, we would just say $1 because we only want to report in whole dollars, and if we paid anyone a silly amount, we don't want to report on that. So I just clicked OK then. So my file name defaults to taxable payments, and you just save that somewhere on your network where you can get to it easily. I'm going to save that on my desktop. Click Save. And the system thinks about it. And like everything in Sage, it will print a journal, okay? The payment summaries are no longer printed. We don't use them anymore. But the journal, just for kicks, I am going to print that to file, and I'm going to save that on my desktop, and I'm just going to call it test, and I'm going to save it as a PDF just so it's a bit easier. I'm going to just say OK and start. And that's going. You can see right there in the background now, if I just wiggle that over, there's my taxable payment report, and that's my audit report that I don't know what that is. That's my audit report that I just saved called test. So you can open up the taxable payment report and you can just, you don't need to, but if you felt like sticky beaking at it, you could open it in Notepad and it just looks like a bunch of characters that mean nothing. But that is the format that the tax office needs it in. And that's the file then that you upload into your portal. And then you can, before you do that, you take a sneak peek at what your audit trail is telling you. So you can see here, we've got some warnings. So it's just telling me some vendors didn't have an amount above our threshold of $1. Some had zero gross amount, things like that. Some were, you know, these are all just warnings. Most of them won't. Obviously, if there's a zero gross amount, you're more than happy for the system to skip past it. Really what you want to look at is the number of vendors successful is 7. Hopefully you've got a ballpark figure in your mind. You should know where your company's at. You should know whether you've got 7 or 700. And then, of course, there's the amounts that you're reporting down the bottom. In this case, when we upload the file, we'll be reporting 31,000 with 1,993 in tax. So if you're happy with all that, then you just upload this taxable payment file via your regular portal. There'll be a file submission or file lodgement icon there somewhere. Then when you're happy that you've done all that, you then need to close the taxable payment year. And it will tell you your current year is 2000. Obviously, I'm on sample data. Yours will say 2021. Your new year will then roll over to 2022, and you can start. And all that does is, in your vendor master file, with all your current balances and totals, it just rolls things from this year into last year for taxable payment reporting. So with the reporting, you only ever have the option to print this year or last year. So make sure you're entirely happy with the file before you roll over the year. And I think that covers all the basics. Have we had any questions come in, Ben? I know you're there, Ben. Talk to me.
Sorry, I was muted. I was talking to myself for a while.
Yeah.
Nothing's come in chat window.
Okay, so if you've got any questions, that's the time to ask. I'm just going to recap things quickly while everyone's thinking. So jumping back to my screen, going to our drop box, which hopefully you have got a link to. Year documents 2021. The written document is there for taxable payment. I'll just highlight that line if I can. So you can either download that in Word or PDF, and that's basically just covering everything that we've talked about. Gives you some links to the...
doesn't have that document, just...
And yeah, as Ben was going to say, if you don't have that document or don't have that link, just send an email into the help desk and just send me, and just put in the subject line, please send links for TPAR documents.
That's true for review procedures. If you haven't received them, just let us know. We'll send you a link to the copy of it.
And of course, in that same folder in our Dropbox was the report that you can download if you want to. And of course, if you have any trouble loading the report on your reports menu, again, just send in an email to help desk and we can do a quick link with you. So prior to lodging your TPAR, you'll either run the custom report and make sure you're happy with it, or you're going to do a vendor inquiry and add all fields in there to make sure you're happy with it. When you're happy with it, you're going to go to tasks and generate your taxable payment report. Then you're going to check your audit trail report to see if it's okay. If you're still happy with it, upload it to the tax office and then close your taxable payment year. Easy as. What are the most common problems that we see? I hear you ask, Ben. The most common problems we see are missing ABNs. You can use your inquiry to fix them. The second most common one would be people who put punctuation in the ABNs. So just, again, using your inquiry, just make sure your ABNs haven't got hyphens or full stops. And the other crazy one is when people put punctuation in the state, because the ABN file does upload your vendor address. So it's surprising how often people in a state, for example, you know, if it's only 2 digits, might be, you know, South Australia, instead of just typing SA, S.A will cause a rejection. So just make sure you haven't got any crazy characters in the state or even the postcode. You don't want full stops or hyphens there. Okay, so they're the most common problems we see. No ABNs, punctuation in ABNs, or punctuation in city, state, or zip postcode fields. They're the most common problems, so if you can sort of get them cleaned up, I think you're home and hosed. If anyone else...
One of the other ones that some people contact us about is having an excessive amount of vendors on your report that, you know, you haven't transacted with during the past year, and that's just due to the fact that you haven't put in the minimum amount that Janelle was talking about before. So one of the reasons for that field is to only grab people where you've got the amounts.
Yeah, look,
so
you could up that to $5 or $10, really. That's the minimum reporting amount. Anyone who deals with me on a regular basis will know that we've got a few minutes to spare, so I've talked about the important stuff. So if anyone wants to drop out, you're not going to miss out on anything. But I'm actually a big fan of this one in accounts payable. Tools and remove vendors. I'm always astounded at how many vendors are in people's systems that have no activity, or they haven't had activity for many, many years. So let's do that for kicks. So let's just go tools, remove vendors, and we're going to use the preview only option at the top. And if we put a condition on there to say something like last invoice amount was less than or equal to 0. I forget my number pad doesn't work in. And then if we do a printer setup, print it to a file that I will send to my desktop. And we're just going to call it remove vendors, save it to a PDF, and start. And this will give you a feel for how many vendors you've got in your system. There's my report down the bottom now. I'll just open that up.
Yep. I've got a question from Matthew, which after you finish that one. Can you still see, can you still view historical AP data for vendors after they've been deleted?
Yes. Okay, so we'll finish this. So I can see from this report, I've got 60 vendors in my system that have never had a check or a payment from us. So why do you want to keep them? So if you were happy to do that, you could just go back into remove vendors. And instead of doing the preview only, do remove vendors. So in answer to Matthew's question, if you went ahead and removed these, what it will do is remove the vendor from the master file. Okay, so when you come to this list here, they will be removed from this list. And of course, that goes every other module when you go vendor list, you know, and it just removes that entire list. So you're taking away their ID, their name, their address. You can always re-add it.
So we wouldn't use that for people that had transactions. We would just move them to a...
No, you could. The transaction information, so if you come down to invoice register, the transaction information will still be in your system under vendor ID ABC123. But vendor ABC123 no longer has a name against it because its master file record isn't there. Transaction history still is very much there. Okay. Hopefully that answers your question. Yes, go Ben.
John's asking, what is the difference between inactive and remove?
Well, an inactive will still leave it in your system, but just sort of drop it off your reports and things like that. So for those of you who don't know, where is it? There is a little tick box.
First tab, general tab.
General, is it?
Yeah.
Inactive.
So the main difference there
is that it
stays.
Yeah.
Sorry, go.
Yeah. So if you make it inactive, it still stays in the system, but it will drop off your reports and inquiries and things like that. If you remove it, gone forever. Only way to get it back is to manually rekey it.
Yeah. If you think you might need to use them in future, you would just mark them inactive, and that way if you needed to use them, you'd come and untick the inactive and then they're available to be used again. You don't have to re-enter all your data.
Yeah, and that's where Ben and I would disagree. I would say, well, just remove it because you can always rekey it back in if you need to. But I make no but I make no excuses. I'm pretty brutal about neat and tidy data. Okay, so we've gone just on half an hour now. Any more questions, Ben?
Yep, we got one from Tracy. Does anyone else pay subbies through payroll? Notes did not cover that. We had to manually enter payments.
Very few people actually, Tracy. You are a rare breed. So what Tracy's saying is their subcontractors, rather than treat them as an AP vendor, they actually pay their subcontractors through payroll and pick them up in their weekly payroll run and do the direct deposit from there. And if that is, and very few people do that, Tracy, you're special. And if that is your method, basically what you have to do is still create a vendor in AP and then a dummy invoice for the total that you've paid them for the year and then a dummy payment. So, and the reason there isn't any written instructions for that is because so few people do it and we're just really busy and it's hard to justify spending, you know, because these instructions do take a long time by the time you type it up, screen snips, proofread, formatting, all that.
Yeah, the instructions that we publish every year cover the majority of cases, and where you know there is the minority, then it's just you'll need to contact us to get assistance for that sort of thing. It's unfortunate, but we just can't produce you know instructions for every potential scenario. Does anyone else have any questions?
Not necessarily about TPAR, but any questions at all while you've got some free consulting? Otherwise, we'll bomb this out and say thanks for attending.
Yeah, if you've got any specifics inquiries about your particular setup or scenarios, then feel free to contact the help desk and we'll get someone to help you as soon as we can. It is a busy time of year, but we'll try and get to you as soon as we can.
Did I just see a late question drop in there, Ben?
No, it's just someone saying goodbye.
Did someone ask about this?
Sorry. Anna, you're right. Anna has asked, will the space in the ABN be an issue? I think the answer to that was no. Is that right?
That is right. It doesn't matter how your ABN is set up with or without spaces, because when you run that generate taxable payment report off the task menu, that report automatically formats everything into what the AETO requires. The only thing we would recommend is avoid using any punctuation in the ABN, such as hyphens or full stops. But with spaces, without spaces, yeah, no, it doesn't matter. Okay. I think that's it.
Last chance for final questions. Might be it.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.
Thanks, Janelle.
Bye.